Okay, so I'm really bad at this, but I wanted to go over some of the tools that you're going to need for this project and alternates. So because I semi-professionally sew, these are the tools that I use. This is a rotary cutter. It looks like a pizza wheel, but it's like very sharp. My ruler, which is an acrylic template, and a self-healing cutting mat. If you don't have these three things, which a lot of people don't, and that's okay, you can also use just a regular ruler and a pair of scissors. If you're going to use this method, I suggest before you cut out your fabric to get a piece of cardboard, like a cereal box, and mark out your template of the 6.5 by 9 so that you can place it on top of your fabric and then draw the lines and make sure that you get a good square, because we want good corners. Other things that you're going to need is an iron, because we're going to be pressing some stuff, and you know, my house is a mess, sorry. So we'll need the iron, and then you'll need something to iron on, like an ironing board, or if you only have a table, you can put a towel down and iron on that. And yeah, so next we'll talk about the fabric. All right, guys, so quick once over about the sewing machine. I have a Bernina, but you can use any sewing machine. You're gonna want to know where your presser feet, your feed dogs, and your 1/4 inch mark are. I think I showed you that 1/4 inch mark a little bit earlier. Maybe I'm gonna show it to you later. I've kind of done this out of order. I also wanted to talk to you guys about the thread. I'm just using plain white 100% cotton thread. I also have black for the darker colors. It doesn't, thread color doesn't really matter, but we want to use that 100% cotton. Again, the same reason that we're using 100% cotton fabric. We don't want the synthetic fabrics because they can melt. Try to be familiar with your machine if at all possible. If not, this is a great time to get familiar with your machine. I'm going to show you over here. I'm just using a straight stitch and a 2.5 stitch length, which is a normal stitch length for a machine. It's like an average setting across all machines. So that's, if you're wondering where my machine settings are coming from, it's just basically, it's the machine setting when I turn the machine on. And yeah, so I'm going to rethread my machine here real quick and we'll get started. Okay, so we're back. This is my ironing mat, in case you're wondering what this is, but just a regular ironing mat or an iron will do. Here's the fabric that you're going to need. You're going to need 3 pieces. Ideally, if you could have 3 separate pieces so you know where each piece is, then that's awesome. If you do not have the availability, that can easily be, you need at least 2 different ones. So like if I didn't have this one right here, I would just swap him out with another piece of white. Okay, but for demonstration purposes, I want to show you 3 separate pieces of fabric. All right, and these are the 6.5 by 9 pieces. And we're going to layer those in just a second. But I want to tell you about the ties. I'm trying to do this looking through my camera, it's very hard. So here's the ties, and in my instructions I say with the fabric, and I know some of you don't know what that means, so I'm going to show you the best I can. So with the fabric means you've gone and gotten yardage, which is like fabric off the bolt from Joann's, Walmart, name a fabric supplier, that's what it is. If you can kind of see these like little holes on the end, we call those the selvages. When you're cutting a long strip off, like I have, from one end of the selvage to the other, it's all like folded, it comes folded on the bolt like that in the middle. We call that width of fabric. So you're going to need 2 strips that are 2 inches wide by the width of your fabric. If you get yardage, most of the time that's 44 by 45 inches. If you don't have yardage and you're just making it out of maybe some old sheets or something, you can definitely either piece those together or just cut it off about the 45 inch mark. Doesn't really need to be much longer than that. 45 inches will go around a very large man's head. So there's that. So let's talk about real quick the type of fabric. This is all 100% cotton fabric. It is what is being requested by hospitals that are in need, clinics that are in need, because it can be sterilized in their autoclave sterilizers, which uses a combination of heat and pressure to make sure it's very clean. If you use synthetic materials, anything with polyester in it, fleece, not flannel, but fleece, it can melt. The temperatures get hot enough that it can melt. It does not get hot enough to burn because of the way they do it, the cotton, which is why most hospitals use cotton. So we're going to use cotton fabric. Now you can find cotton fabric in old sheets, like I said, old pillowcases. Try not to use t-shirt material it has too much stretch in it, so I'm gonna get Isabella to come over here and help me real quick demonstrate here. So Isabella, if you will hold that between your hands and give it a tug, like away, okay, a little bit of tug. Now turn it the other way. No, like long ways. There you go. Give it another tug. See how it has like no stretch, guys? All right, now she's gonna do the same thing but with the end of her shirt. All right, now you see how that stretches really far? That's what we don't want. We want these masks to stay very secure and very tight against the face, and so you want to use 100% cotton material. Most sheets are 200 to 300 thread count, unless you're super fancy. That's just fine. If you guys have old sheets you can cut up and that's what your mom, dad, or whoever is letting you use, that is perfectly all right. Like I said, if you can get 3 different fabrics or at least 2 different colors, that would be great. So we're gonna move on now to step number, I think it's number 2. I'm really bad at this, sorry. And that's the layering. So we've got our fabric pieces cut. Now we're gonna layer it. And when I talk about right sides of the fabric or the front side of the fabric, that's this pretty side right here. That's the side with the nice pattern on it. And you can tell the difference because the back side is usually duller, like that. Now if you're using a solid color like this white here, it doesn't matter. It actually has no front side. But if we're using 2 different pretty patterns, we want to make sure that when we sew them together the first time, they are on top of each other like this. So you'll have a sandwich with the 2 pretty sides facing each other. And then we just put this one, because this will be in the middle. Not that it's the ugly fabric, but it's the fabric that's the least pretty, and we'll put that in the center. All right, we're gonna move on to the ties. So we have our long piece of fabric, our 2-inch by width of fabric. So for mine, it's 2 inches by 45 inches. And the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna iron it in half. So Isabella's gonna iron while I talk, because I only have one hand. So you're gonna iron it in half and try to, we call it pressing in the quilting world, and it's simply like picking up the iron and moving it, not really wiggling it back and forth too much. We're not ironing a shirt, we're pressing fabric. So we're gonna iron in half, and I'm just gonna have her stop right there. So once you have the whole thing ironed in half, and you're gonna do that to both of the strips, and you're gonna open it up like this, and you're gonna fold the raw edge, let me get down in there so you can see what she's doing, the raw edge up to the center crease there, and you're gonna press that as well. So it takes a little bit of maneuvering. It's kind of a slow process. You know, listen to an audio book, listen to the radio. Can't really watch TV because you kind of gotta watch what you're doing because it is hot. Right, that's good, bud. And then you're gonna do it again to the other side. And when you're done, it's gonna look like this. You're gonna have both these raw edges to the center. And now the next step here is you're going to fold that in half again. I know you're saying we just did that. One was to mark our spot, and this is to actually make the tie. And you're gonna iron it all the way down. So you've got like a really, really long, skinny hot dog bun when you're done. All right, that's good. And it's gonna look like this. So you're gonna have the tie, and inside are these raw edges, these cut edges, because we want to keep all of this from fraying, but we also want to make it very sturdy. All right, so that's what you're going to do with those ties. You're going to do that to both of those, and when you have those done, I will show you what to do next. Okay, so we're here at the sewing machine, and we're going to get ready to sew. Now, if you look here at it's called a plate. If you look at the plate underneath your foot, this is the foot, this is the plate. You see this little notch right there. There's one that says 3/8, and there's this little notch right here. Most sewing machines have something similar, and that is your 1/4 inch marker. All right. It also lines up really well with the edge right here, this outside edge of the presser feet. This right here. This little contraption. These are the feed dogs. This is the presser foot. Y'all are getting some education today. Alternately, if you have a tray, it could also tell you 1/4 inch. So that's what we're going to be sewing. We're going to be sewing a 1/4 inch line all the way around our fabric, and we're going to do that. If you guys can see. I know it's white on white. Probably should just flip it over. Sorry, the lighting's terrible. We've got our long edges, and then we have our short edges. We're going to start on one of the long edges, and we're going to start about 1/3 the way down. Okay, so about 1/3 the way down. So I'm going to, and it's about 1/3 way down. If you hold on to this little string right here, your top string, it won't get sucked down and make a little rat's nest underneath. And you're going to sew And then what you're gonna see me do is I have a little button that does what's called a back stitch, and it's gonna go back a little bit and then go forward a little bit. And that's gonna secure those stitches so they don't pull out later. All right, so it's gonna get loud, but we'll cut the loudness out, hopefully. We can figure this out. And I go back a few stitches and then go forward. And you're gonna do this all the way around. Now, you can stop 1/4 of an inch away from the edge and pivot, but honestly, we're not gonna worry too much about that. And what I'm gonna show you guys to do is just sew off the edge and then how to reposition it and sew again. So I'm gonna sew off the edge there. We're gonna lift up. I have my needle set so that it stays down. We're just gonna turn it. Don't worry about snipping your threads, just turn it. Put your foot down and keep on sewing. You may have to sort of readjust your fabric, but I sew a lot faster. I've been doing this a very long time. You guys go as slow as you need to go, all right? Slow is fast and all that army jazz. And go right off the edge. I'm gonna raise it up. I'm gonna turn it. Raise it up, and you can see it's kind of got a little off here. I'm gonna cut this just for the sake of showing you guys. You see it? Oh, just kidding. Is it in? All right, so you see it's gotten a little off here. That's okay. Don't worry about that too much. The main thing is we want to make sure we catch all 3 layers when we sew. So when I go back to sew down the short side, I'm going to watch up here and make sure that I get my presser foot lined up with this white fabric, not this top fabric, okay? It'll work itself out in the end, I promise. And then one more time, we're gonna come down about 1/3 here and stop, and then we're gonna have about 1/3 of the way of a gap, and that's gonna be our gap where we're gonna turn it. Back stitch. And that's it. So you've got that. All right, so Belle's gonna keep holding on. I'm going to search in vain for my scissors. To make it a little easier to turn, we're going to, I'm gonna look right here. We're gonna cut the corner a little bit, okay? We're not gonna cut where this junction is, where the 2 threads meet. We're gonna cut kind of right across here, making a little triangle. If you're fussy, you can trim this, but it's really not necessary. And we're gonna trim all 4 corners just a tiny bit, and that's gonna make it nicer when we go and turn it inside out, okay? We're also gonna take our threads. Don't worry too much about the threads that come off the fabric. They'll be all tucked inside. And so now we've got our rectangle with the ends snipped off. And now we're gonna turn it. All right, so now we're gonna turn this inside out. I have a chopstick. You can also use a pencil, anything that doesn't have a super sharp point. Maybe we should redo that part. Crap! All right, so, you know, sort of a blunted end. Most people have a chopstick laying around or a dulled pencil, something like that. This is gonna help us make our corners poke out. So now we're gonna go in here, and I'm gonna make sure that I get in between my 2 pretty fabrics here. And I'm going to, kind of like a sock or a stocking, I'm gonna put my thumb right in this corner. And I'll put my finger right on top of my thumb. And I'm going to push the 2 together to where it comes out. It's not gonna come out perfectly. We're gonna fix that in a second, but you can do that to all 4 corners, okay? And then just sort of very gently kind of roll it so that it goes inside out. You got this sort of this little, almost like a little pouch. You can take your chopstick, kind of poke those corners out. I don't know if you can see, they just come out a little bit better. Makes it a little thinner to sew because we're gonna sew it again, okay? All 4 corners. And then what you're gonna do is kind of flatten it out. Maybe take the fabric and sort of, we're gonna iron it here in a second. Sort of flatten it out. Now you've got this open spot here, right? It's going to kind of want to do what it's supposed to do, and that's if you hold it where you've got your seam and just sort of sort of put your finger in it and let it, see how the fabric just wants to roll inside? It wants to go with its friends. Like all those little fibers want to kind of just go with their friends. So kind of just, we call it finger pressing, kind of smash your fingers down over it, hold it together. Okay, it may not be 100% straight. That's okay. What we say in the quilting world is finish is better than perfect. And that's what we're kind of going for. We want it as straight as possible, but don't get hung up over it. So now we're going to press it just to keep it nice and flat while we get ready for the next step. And pressing for us is just press, press. I'm not moving it. I'm just sort of smashing it down with a hot iron. And that's just going to hold it all together. And if you guys can see, because I pressed it, these want to stay together. It may take an extra second. But again, finish is better than perfect. So, give it a nice press. All right. Back to the sewing machine. All right, so now we're back at the sewing machine. I like to start on the edge that's got this opening because then I can control it just a little bit better. And my preference is to start off the edge, okay? We wanna line it up with that 1/4 inch line again, or right up against, this is a 1/4 inch foot for my machine. I can line it up right against here. Holding on to my top strings, start slow. When you're going over these corners, it is a bit thicker. You wanna go a little slower or you're going to break a needle. Ask me how I know. See how when I'm holding it, it's lined up here? And if I come down here, if I move this, it's right up against this 1/4 inch line. Your sewing machine wants things to go straight, so you're doing good if this is what's happening. And just go a 1/4 inch all the way around. Now this one I do pivot. So I stop about there. If it's not perfect, it's fine. As you can see, this was not perfect at all. It's fine. It'll even itself out later. Finished better than perfect, right? All right, so go down this way. Pivot. Pivot. And on this end, I just sew off. Okay, all that stuff's gonna be caught underneath your ties anyway, so it's not gonna be a big deal. Trim off. All right. All right, so now we're gonna make the pleats in our mask. To hold them together, I use these little things. They're called Wonder Clips. They kind of look like little binder clips. If you have binder clips, you can also use them. It's a little too thick for pins. But if that's all you have, do your best. Just be very, very careful. If you have some of these or if you have binder clips, I would suggest using those. Now, this is very subjective, the pleating. My technique has been to sort of grab it at about the 2 inch mark and bring it down to about the 1 inch mark, which is very non-specific, all right? And then you bring it down and then you fold it back up. And what it's gonna do, it's gonna make about a 1/4 inch pleat. Let's see if you can see that. It's about the width of a fingernail right here at the end. If you need to adjust it, you know, just sort of move it up a little bit or what have you. It's a little bit of a patience thing. If you get one side done, you can lay it back down. And again, the fabric's gonna kind of wanna go where its friends are. So just kind of lay it down and it's gonna wanna make that straight line. Let me bring it up, just make sure it's kind of straight. And then for the second pleat, so now I've got it 1, 2, 3, 4, I got about 5 inches tall. I want to bring it down to about 4, 3.5, 4-ish, somewhere in between there. Like I said, it's very scientific. All right. It's about there. So I got about 3 3/4. All right. And that's going to look about like that. And yeah, you're going to have a little down here and a lot down here. Honestly, it works out just fine. Pin that. I'm going to hold it down again, just kind of make sure it's sort of even. Now at this point, this is up to you. What I've been doing is I've been going back and giving it just a quick press with the iron to hold these down. For you guys, I'm not going to worry about that right now. I just want to show you how this works, but if you're making a bunch of them, I would suggest doing that because it does just it lays flatter. It's a little bit easier to work with when it's pressed like that. So now we're gonna come back over to the sewing machine. All right guys, we're back at the sewing machine. Again, we're gonna sew with a 1/4 inch stitch length. We've made our pleats. I'm gonna take these out because I'm right here at the machine. I'm gonna put my needle in right there. And you're gonna wanna go slow because this is really thick, all right? If you have the option to use a jeans needle or something called a walking foot, which is that big blocky thing that's on my machine over there, this is definitely the time to use it. If you don't have it, then I'm showing you this is a normal universal needle and just a normal machine setup. So anybody can do this. You just have to be cognizant and go a little slower because it is thicker and it will break. So very carefully, you're gonna feed that through. When you get to the end, I'm gonna leave my needle down. I'm gonna spin it around and I'm gonna go right back, little thread there, right back across, and that gives us just a little extra stitching for a little extra durability. There is that. Trim the thread off. Okay, so I'm gonna slide back over here and we will do the attaching of our ties. Okay, so now we're going to attach our ties, and sorry if you can hear the dog eating her dinner in the background. She's a bit of a pig. And the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna find the center of our ties, and the way we're gonna do that is we're gonna kind of hold it up, find our ends, okay, and that's gonna find our ties. Again, I'm just gonna mark these real quick with my binder clip, my little wonder clips here. And I'm gonna find the center of my mask. Super easy, you fold it in half. Give it a good little pinchy pinch, just like that. And that's all that's gonna do is give it a short-term memory. You can kind of see where this little crease is. If you're not comfortable with that and you wanna mark it with a pencil, by all means. And we are going to take one of our ties, now that we have our center marked. And I'm going to, I don't know if you guys can see the center mark there. I'm going to tuck in, try to match it up as close as possible. Close enough is good enough. Finish is better than perfect. I make it as close as possible, but it's not imperative that it's 100% perfect. And I'm gonna clip it kind of loosely. I'll show you in a little bit how we're gonna make it a little tighter once we get to sewing it, so it's not super important, but we're gonna tuck it in. See how it's on both sides there? Okay, we're gonna tuck it in there. And we're gonna do that to both sides. So I've got both my ties attached to the mask. Now we wanna finish off our ends here. And the way we're gonna do that, super easy and simple. We're gonna have a few, I need one more. We're gonna have a few of our little clips here, or you can, this is thin enough, you can use a pin. And we're gonna open it up real quick, and we're gonna fold it down about 1 inch, which is about as wide as a thumbnail, okay? And then we're gonna fold it back the way it was. This is a little tricky, but if you just sort of like keep pinching it and moving a little bit, it kind of falls into place. Remember, the fabric kind of wants to go with its friends. And just sort of give it a little pinch. And now you see those raw edges on the ends there are nicely tucked inside. Okay, you're gonna do that to all 4. And I'm gonna show you on this one, you can clearly see this little fuzzy part of the selvage edge. Doesn't even matter. Just fold it slightly, maybe a little bit more past those rack holes where they keep it on the spinning racks, and pinch together. I'll show you guys one more time, probably slower because I've done a bunch of these. Open it up, fold it down, and then we're gonna fold it right back to the center. It's kind of like origami. So it's like fabric origami here, right? So we got it in the center, and then fold it together. Right. A few little threads stick out, don't worry about it. They'll fall out or get worn down. And mostly we want these super raw edges here to be tucked in so that there's no fraying. We don't want these falling apart on us. We want them to last, especially if we're donating them to medical professionals, because they're going to be used and abused. If the facility is asking for them, that means they're definitely in need of them. So, all right, so I've got all 4 of mine done, and I've got my mask secured. So now we're going to go back to the machine. I'm going to show you how to sew those on. All right, so we're back at the machine, and the way I like to work with my fabrics is I like to keep the bulk of my project to the outside because there's all this space versus the inside. This is called the throat space. It's kind of narrow. So I'm going to keep this open piece facing out. All right, take that off. Our end is a little thick. So just like before, so on this side is a 1/4 inch, and also on your machine, this side is also a 1/4 inch. So sometimes people, I'm right-handed, left-handed people like to line their stuff up on this side because it's easier for them. Whichever is your preference. They're both a 1/4 inch. So I'm gonna start slow, and I'm gonna use my backspace again or backstitch, not backspace. This isn't a computer. I mean, it is, but it's not. So it's gonna stitch, and I'm gonna go to right about where I can feel that ledge where the extra fabric is folded, and then I'm gonna go back and forward again. So. And now you just stitch all the way down until you get to the corner of the mask. So I'm gonna fly through this because I'm a speed demon. All right, so when I get to about here, I'm about a fingertip away, more or less, I'm gonna take my clip off, and if it's bunched up at all here, I can give it just a little stretch. If it's stretched across the width of the mask, it's not going to matter very much, but you don't wanna pull this while you're sewing it or it'll be wrinkly. If you saw what my fingers were, my fingers were just keeping it gliding through, and I could kind of like keep it in the same spot, but I wasn't pulling or tugging in any way. So right now I am gonna give it just a bit of a tug, just to tighten that up, and when I hit about 1/2 inch over that edge, I'm going to back stitch again to reinforce that edge. Okay, and then you're just gonna straight stitch all the way across. Okay, here again is a good place to stop. And if it's starting to bunch up, and you'll be able to see if it's bunching up, you just give this a light tug, and I'm only gonna tug it until it stitches to about down here, and then I'll stop tugging it again. Okay, back stitch for security and reinforcing, and then speed demon time. All right, and last time we're gonna stop, and we're gonna back stitch over this edge to secure it. And you've got your secured, and you'll trim those off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll show you the finished mask. And there you have it. There is a finished mask. Good for it. This is the adult size. If anyone's interested in the kid size, those measurements for the rectangle are 5 by 7, but all the same processes apply, including the ties. So there you go. Good luck.